Before we start tonight's program, this is a reminder that this episode will address various topics related to mental health, addiction, and a reminder about multiple sclerosis. These may be sensitive to some of our viewers. As always, viewer discretion is advised. We remind you to please consult your doctor, your mental health professional, your outreach group, your sponsor, or specialist before adopting any change to your dietary, physical, and/or mental health regime. If you're looking for options to reach with respect to mental health, contact SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, at 1-800-662-HELP. That's 1-800-662-4357. The service is open 24/7, 365 days a year, and is a confidential free information service for individuals and family members facing such stressors. Importantly, if you're feeling suicidal crisis or emotional distress and need to be put in touch with a crisis center, call the Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-TALK. It's 1-800-273-8255. Or go to suicidepreventionlifeline.org. You can also, You can also text the word HOME to 741-741. Again, HOME to 741-741. Those resources are also available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And as we've been talking about since the beginning of the year, and this is something, needless to say, paramount in my mind and heart since January. The National MS Society is a collective of passionate individuals who want to do something about MS now, to move together towards a world free of multiple sclerosis. Multiple sclerosis is comprised of unpredictable and often disabling flare-ups of the central nervous system. Such flare-ups disrupt the flow of information within the brain and between the brain and the body. The National MS Society is the largest private funder of MS researchers in the world, investing more than $1 billion to date. MS stops people from moving, but the National MS Society exists to make sure that MS doesn't. To contact the National MS Society, please call 1-800-344-4867. Once again, 1-800-344-4867. Or go to their website at nationalmssociety.org. Also of note, we are still raising money for the National MS Society through a Venture to a Cure's fundraising page at rebrand.ly/a venture to a cure. Again, rebrand.ly/a venture to a cure. This was the page that was created in conjunction with the virtual MS Walk back on May 1st. And this effort will last through the end of September. Thank you for all of you who have donated money to this amazing organization. It touches me and over to 1 million people in this country in so many ways that have multiple sclerosis, and I appreciate all of you. Of note, not sure if you read the news, but Christina Applegate, Married with Children fame, famous actress, just came out having multiple sclerosis within the last couple days. So it affects many people, and I get the sense that over time we're going to find more and more people that actually do have MS. So any sort of consideration, any sort of education or donation to the MS Society, National MS Society, that is gratefully appreciated. As I mentioned, it's over 1 million people that have multiple sclerosis, and we are all appreciative of this. And on that, let's begin. There are phrases as we make a major change in our life that stand out. This is a phrase that I've talked to before on the show, but it stands out today, at least in the last couple weeks, and I thought it would be very important to talk about that tonight. So that phrase is that there is no alternative. When we talk about the 3 chief addictions that the show has been about, but others, there is no alternative. Tonight we're going to talk about how we know that to be true. We're going to talk about basically what those addictions were about, but the cost that each of those addictions had therein. We'll talk about that. We'll take your questions and comments, because this is the Venture Forward. Good evening, or good morning, or good afternoon, wherever you may be, and welcome to the Venture Forward. I am John Venturini. I am a recovering addict of alcoholism, obesity, overeating, and also compulsive gambling. And it is an honor and pleasure to see all of you tonight on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. We talk about expressions and mantras and things that we grow very close to over time. And tonight we're going to talk about one of those. And for me, that there truly is no alternative. And for reasons we've discussed before on the show, but definitely things I'm going to remind the audience and remind myself even. Although you live it, you definitely don't need any sort of reminder. Why there truly is no alternative, because the alternative to that is not a good one whatsoever. So good evening to all of you on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. I'm going to say hello to Saren over on YouTube. Wow, got my icons mixed up and everything. Good evening, Saren. Hope you're well. Marilyn, good evening. Good afternoon, JB. Wow. Pray all is well with you. It's getting there. It's been an interesting couple of weeks for sure, but I'm definitely getting back to normal. So thank you, Marilyn. Appreciate it. Sarah over on YouTube says, "Hi, JV, you're live." Yes, I am live. I am alive, and we are talking about what we talk about on this show. And it's great to see you tonight for sure. And the sober singer, I tip my hat off to you. I hope you're doing well. In fact, I hope everybody's doing well tonight. Quick note before we start tonight's show, outside of the disclaimer, is the fact that we're going to talk about intermittent fasting and the sort of parallel between mental health and physical health. Because of something I saw this morning, namely this sheet of paper, I had a light bulb basically go off, in a sense that I wanted to talk about this tonight. And I think through the challenge that we talked about, that started on August 1st, and going down that road and really doing some digging into myself as far as things that I know I talk about and stream and basically convey to all of you, I felt the need to go back to this topic tonight, that there is no alternative. This sheet of paper was an exercise that a therapist basically assigned me to do, I think a year ago. And at bare minimum, you're saying to yourself, "Oh, it's a sheet of paper." It really is just 3 columns, right? It's a column that says what doesn't fit, what it gives, what the addiction or what the thing gave you, and what the cost of it was. And when you start thinking about these sort of things, you really come to grips as far as how far back you were pushed because of these addictions, because of these behaviors. So tonight we're going to talk about that. And I think, as the lead up to all of these episodes, you see the board. So there's a reminder as far as number of days I've been tracking, number of days I've been sober, number of days I haven't been gambling, the amount of weight I've lost. But when we start talking about this qualitatively underneath it all, there is a lot to be said about what I lost in the process of these addictions, what I lost in the process of these behaviors. And we're talking about that tonight. So let me go over to some slides. And in the sense that when I say there is no alternative, I feel bad about how dire that sounds. But for me, it really is that. There is no alternative. I know what this life was. Losing the weight, gaining the weight back, losing the weight, gaining the weight back, and now having lost it for the 3rd time. There is no room for me to gain that weight back. Just as much as, because there's a heavy correlation between a couple of other addictions in this, that there really is no alternative for me to go back to these things. So let's talk about that. 4 chief addictions that have served the crux of the last 32 months. And that of the drinking, as far as overeating, as far as gambling, as far as toxic relationships. I list that last one because we think about this in the sense that there are such a thing as codependency and co-addiction that occurs within all of this. And go back to Maine for a second. It's not necessarily any sort of verdict against relationships I've had in the past. It's not any sort of verdict against my marriage. It's not any sort of verdict against the relationship I've had with family members or friends or whatnot. It is basically what I bring to that party. But moreover, having very weak walls and having that basically usurp into losing my sense of identity, losing my sense of health, losing all of that. So when we talk about toxic relationships, that's exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about that sort of relationship between myself and others, not necessarily other people, but other places, other things, all of that. There is one expression between the defense of those 4 things that has been the rally of the last 32 months. And that is, there is no alternative. There is no alternative. If I go back to that, it could destroy me. So let's talk more about exactly what these 4 things have done. What was the sort of gravitational force that brought me to those things? But also, what did I lose? What was the cost of all 4 of those things? We think about this in a guise of, well, we identify what these things are. We think about what it gave us, that sort of short-term satisfaction, these sort of short-term sort of dopamine drips and serotonin drips and all of that. But when we also think about the cost of the behavior. And it's not necessarily saying, okay, well, because I understand this, there's no way I'm going back. It takes a lot more than that. But identifying these sort of things, basically putting pen to paper, but also going through that sort of deep thought about why we did it and why we will not do it again, is a very important exercise. We talk about the steps as far as addiction. This is just as much an inventory, just as much as a list of potential amends that we have to make. At bare minimum, right? So that's what's on the line here. So there are 4. Let's talk about drinking. And I know it'd be very obvious for me to start talking about the overeating and the binge eating and all that stuff. But with respect to drinking, it really was a sort of thing that wasn't a mainstay of my entire drinking life, or legal drinking life, I would say. It was really a mainstay when things got really bad. So what did it give us, right? It gave me a temporary escape from the daily grind, from other things that are going on around me. It was an escape. Much as anyone who would go ahead and imbibe, they're looking for an escape. They're looking for that sort of release from the certain situation that they're in. It gives us a sense of relaxation. I would say a false sense of relaxation, because if you drink way too much, there are other sort of evils that come up with that. So as far as any sort of no sense of satiation, no sense of balance, it could quickly go off the rails really quickly. What's the cost of this? I think about it in the terms of 5 things. Kidney stones, gallstones, I would say paralyzed metabolism that gave me type 4 morbid obesity, almost making me 500 pounds, with a BMI of almost 70. Lack of clarity. So certainly when you're that intoxicated, you can't think straight. When you're that intoxicated, you can't even reason. And I think also lack of tact in serious situations. There are many times where we go out to dinner, whether it is for personal reasons, for business reasons, what have you, where we're basically sometimes in a serious situation, serious question, serious conversation. And when we've imbibed that much, we lack tact. So that was a cost. You know, a dear colleague of mine way back in the day told me about the dangers of drinking when you go out, even on a team dinner, and what sort of awkward situations can occur. And they occurred, not only by myself, but by others. So to understand that makes me realize, hey, there really isn't a reason for me to be drinking outside of the physical effect, outside of the mental effect. And if you want to throw the MS into this picture, sure, let's throw that into the picture for a second too. Someone who's taking Oservis and someone who's trying to change his diet to make sure that there are no more exacerbations, someone that can live a decent life without the onset of lesions, there's really no reason why I should be doing this. So if you take all those things in consideration, that's definitely something we have to talk about. So that's drinking. That's drinking. And moreover, the reasons why I don't. The reasons why I gravitated to it in the first place, but more the reason why I don't anymore. Let's talk about overeating. It's funny, I put a picture of a buffet next to this because when you're not getting any sort of satiation from what you eat and you're always looking for that next sort of place to go, it's just a very ugly situation. I think I talked about this in the beginning of the series where I said I took just as much pleasure as far as a hot dinner out as much as I did closet eating in a drive-through lane. That's how bad overeating was with me. It gave us this sort of world where it gave us comfort, right? So we always talk about comfort foods and everything. We always talk about the foods that we eat for Thanksgiving and the holidays and why we gravitate to those things. And I think the thing I keep in consideration is the fact that, no matter where we overconsume this food, could be a fancy dinner, could be the drive-through lane, but yet we wanted it and we wanted a lot of it. It gave us a false sense of abundance. And I say a false sense because over consuming gave us the sort of idea that it's not giving us abundance. It's actually depleting our health. And it also talks about temporary satiation of craving, which is also a common theme with many of these sort of things we've talked about in this show. That we're looking for that craving, we're looking for that satiation, but we'll never get there because our mechanics are not working to the way they should be working. What was the cost of all this? Well, this one's very obvious. The fact that I was a type 4 morbid obese person. The fact that I was nearly 500 pounds. The fact that I had a very sloth-like tendency. The fact that I couldn't walk through an airport more than 5 to 10 feet without needing to sit. Very much a lack of energy, sleep apnea, pre-diabetic state, and then panic attacks that were disguised as potential heart attacks. Being to the urgent care at least 3-4 times thinking I was having a heart attack, going for an EKG, actually an ER twice too, and learning that no, you're not having a heart attack, your EKG is fine. So they basically give you a medication to calm down and you go home. But given how much my dad had heart attacks, and given the fact that my dad died of a fatal heart attack, you could see why that's accelerated my thinking. But nevertheless, that was a cost. That was a cost of overeating. That was a cost of dealing with all that. Going back to Maine for a second. I am very fortunate that I'm in a much better state right now, in a much better shape, in a much better state of mind is what I was trying to say. That I don't need to do that sort of thing for that sort of fix. Sean says, I could see the comfort in the familiar side of things. Yeah, that's what a lot of us basically gravitate to. We look for that comfort zone. We look for the past and we say, oh, well, this is a comfortable place. This is a place for me to be in. But what does it cost us in the end? It basically depletes us. Sometimes slowly, sometimes a lot quicker than that. And that's certainly the case with the next two. So we think about overeating. What was the other thing that we talk about? We talk about gambling. We talk about something else that is basically a deplete of satiation, or any sort of mechanism of satiation. What did it give us? It gave us a rush. It gave us a high. It gave us a false sense that I can make money, as I end up just giving it back anyway. I always refer to it as the clang clang and the whoop whoops, because we think about the sounds of a casino and whatnot. We think about that sort of attention grabbing thing, that sort of just constant dinging, constant sort of euphoria from those that are winning, but also constant dismay from those that are losing. That excitement draws us in, and then the fact that some casinos are pumped with this, that, and the other thing, and we don't lose any sense. We lose all sense of time because there's no sense of clock in there. It gave us that false sense of excitement. It gave us that adrenaline, but it also cost us majorly. Massive amounts of money. Nice, as I can't even spell mounts correctly. Amounts. Massive amounts of money, time, lack of attention, obsessive compulsion, in my case, a tax audit, and a Chapter 13 bankruptcy. Something that I will be fighting for the next 54 payments. But that's what it cost me. That's what it basically hurt me in. And we think about all those moments where there was those trips and those games and this, that, and the other thing. What was it worth in the end run? When it basically amounted to this. We don't think about it when we walk down that road. We don't think about it when we basically are confronted by that sort of thing. But the reality is that when we do try to be clear of this, we try to be clean of this, we do everything we can to live the best life we can, that puts it in its proper sort of perspective. It's not easy. None of this is easy. Whether it's a question of the fact that I gambled an awful lot of money. When I talk about the amount of money I lost, I talk about an audit that happened at the most inopportune time. But then someone may argue, maybe the audit came at the most opportune time because you needed to be fully cognizant of what was going on there. And then also the after effect of all of this, in the sense that, I have a lot to rebuild. And moreover, if you're thinking about what the last year and change have given us economically, well, if there was any time for me to clean this up, it's going to have to be now. Can't live the rest of my life like this. But, truth be told, I think about my family. And I think about people that have been in my life that hold themselves really close to gambling. And it scares the living crap out of me. It scares me big time. Because they stand to have the same sort of demise that I did. So understanding where you fit in these sort of things and having a healthy behavior is one thing. And it's not to say that people couldn't go out and have a sort of healthy sort of relationship with something they do, very few and far between. But the thing is, people don't do that very few and far between. When you look at someone like me that was going to a neighborhood casino, more times than not, my mind wasn't in the right place. But that is also true about the amount of times I drank. It's also true about the amount of times I overate. So everything has a very similar theme. And when we say there's no addiction, there's no alternative. There is no alternative for me to flip back, because I have made such a concerted effort to try to fix this and try to bring that frame to be as strong as humanly possible, so I can provide love, strength, and support to anybody, anywhere. It's that whole adage about the mask coming down from the cabin of the airplane whose cabin pressure is gone. covering yourself with a mask first and then taking care of everybody else in a row. It shows love, but also making sure that you're okay so you can take care of everybody else. So we talk about the three concepts of overeating and alcoholism and gambling. Let's talk about the thing that lays on the periphery of all that. Toxic, hurtful relationships. Sometimes the relationships were born out of these behaviors. Sometimes they were proliferated by these behaviors. Sometimes they were relationships that had a very ugly turn because we engaged in these behaviors around these relationships. It gave us a false sense of emotional completeness. It gave us a temporary fix. It also gave us a malevolent or unstable army to support us through life. Any sort of relationship that's built on the guise of something that is not thought out, any sort of relationship that has basically come to the precipice because of a short-term sort of situation is never the right sort of thing. Not to say that everything needs that sort of deep meaning. It doesn't. But we also have to be careful of ourselves. Our frame must be strong. Because when our frame is not strong, we end up imploding inside. What's the cost of this? Missing out on the people that matter. Missing out on the things that matter. Missing out on places and events that matter. I am going to have a moment of honesty in the sense that because I was in a very toxic relationship, that I lost a very strong connection to my dad's side of the family. And maybe for one reason or another, but that's something that stands out big time. And I think about other sort of friendships, other sort of relationships that I had that were basically demised because I made either one, bad relationship decisions, or two, bad behavioral decisions, or three, very bad addictions that have come into this life. What did that give me? It gave me long-term hurt. It gave me long-term pain. And it's still having me take out a lot of amends and apology because there has been plenty of things I have to fix. Anybody who has gone down this road fully knows about amends and apology, but also the importance of the inventory, the importance of being fully cognizant of the things we've done, and realizing that when we say there's no alternative, well, we certainly don't want to go back to that realm, do we? Going through this list, a list that I did for therapy last year, but then moreover, the reason why this list came to pass is because there are a lot of people that are around us. Some people in this group, some people that have a tie to this group, that have been shunted, that have been squelched for a good portion of their life. And being cognizant of these things, but also saying to yourself, hey, I'm going to do the best thing I can for me. And when I do that, I know sure as heck I'm doing a lot more for a lot of people. Like I said on that slide, people that are dear to me, places that are dear to me, things that are dear to me. When our frame is strong, anything is within reach. We must never forget that. So on that, I'm going to say, first of all, got VF Talks on Friday night, 5:15 Eastern, 2:15 Pacific. We will talk about the relationship between physical and mental health next Tuesday, as well as talking about intermittent fasting and how that could basically be a Kickstarter for us trying to kick any sort of dietary regime. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the connection 1 week from tonight at 6:30 Eastern, 3:30 Pacific. VF Talks is this Friday at 5:15 Eastern, 2:15 Pacific, where we have a conversation about anything and everything. as we always do on Fridays, and it is a good time indeed. A couple more comments popping up here. Sean says, great info, John. You're awesome. Thank you. Muchly appreciated. I appreciate all of you and all of you with your support and your love for this effort, but also our friendships and the relationships that we form. I'm muchly, very, very indebted to all of you, and I thank you dearly. But until next time, until Friday night, I'm going to say the same thing I say to you at the end of every Venture Forward, every VF Talks. Stay safe, stay sane, stay strong, stay sober. You're worth it. I'll see you Friday night at 5:15 Eastern, 2:15 Pacific. Fly be free.